Welcome to the launch of the Legal Pro-bono 500 initiative, launched by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security in collaboration with the Bar Association of Guyana with technical and funding support from UNFPA. I'd first like to welcome to the mic the Honorable Minister of Human Services and Social Security, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, to give her presentation.
Today is another significant day in what seems to be a significant 16-day period of activism, as the Ministry of Human Services would have been busy every day, busy in the right way, because we have been crafting, tailoring, and working dedicatedly and committedly on many facets towards the one goal of eradicating, eliminating violence against women and girls.
And I always say men and boys too, because we must not forget them. And so if we look at the broader structure of our service delivery as it relates to gender-based violence, domestic violence, in all of its dimensions, it is imperative that we also have practical solutions that can be considered low-hanging fruit. Access to justice is an important, very important and significant aspect to curb what we see right across our country, and that is the steady stream of people seeking access to justice and for one reason or another not able to achieve that in a timely manner or not at all. This does not mean that there are not avenues to access justice. This does not mean that legal services are absent. It simply means that there's need for more. The government of Guyana provides a subvention to Legal Aid, an NGO, and that entity has been offering services to persons experiencing violence across our country in several regions. But with all of that, we still see the need for recourse to legal services. And as such, seeing the profusion of women especially coming through the ministry and saying to me very clearly, repeatedly, we cannot seem to get any legal help, I started to reach out to people I knew in the legal fraternity. Fortunately or unfortunately, you can't fix that with a stethoscope, or as I would have done it. So I started to reach out to the legal fraternity, and none of them said no when I sent someone over for help. And I thought, well, if they're willing, maybe it is important to just harness all of what they can offer. And I reached out to the Guyana Bar Association. And here again, there was a willingness to collaborate, to cooperate, and to fill that void that existed for these many women. It took a few times of us going back and forth to have the formal agreement that we will sign today. But I must say thank you to the many players who worked on this with me within the ministry, notably Anuradha Prasad, and in the Guyana Bar Association, Mr. Taney Husti, Mr. Keoma Griffith, and Pauline Chase. And I know there were conversations on both sides to ensure that in this MOU, we can do the best and continue to expand what we are going to start with now. And so the name that I conceptualized might be considered a mouthful, but it says pro bono, free of cost. And that's what I love to hear when someone comes and asks for help. And I think it brings home the responsibility that should exist in every profession when we deal with an issue that is of the magnitude of violence. And yesterday, I did launch the Community Advocates Network. So I would like to thank the Guyana Bar Association, and later on all the other legal entities will be an integral component of our Community Advocates Network, where we reach out above and beyond what we do in our professional lives and beyond our daily duties. So I want to sincerely express my appreciation to to the Guyana Bar Association for so willingly being party to this and so willingly considering the request that was not one case nor 10 cases, but 500 cases per year at no cost to anyone but to themselves, which means it's not a financial measurement, it is also time and effort that will be spent until these cases are resolved. And for me, resolution means many things, all the way to prosecution, and then even looking further on to rehabilitation, and perhaps we all speak about restorative justice, that's another conversation, but at least women, men, and boys and girls should feel that they have the kind of legal support that they need. And so, having said that, it is a pleasure to be able to formalize this partnership through an MOU that will be signed today between the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and the Guyana Bar Association. I look forward to the 500 expanding, and everyone who knows me knows I will challenge them and say, what about 1,000? But let's start with 500. I'm happy that you agreed to that. And trust me, from the time this is out there, your doors will be knocked on. We might start knocking on those doors as early as tomorrow. That's how necessary and needed this is in our country. And the larger vision that was mentioned is the Hope and Justice Centers that we are going to be working towards as a collaborative effort between the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, where all services related to gender-based violence will be under one roof. A very important partner is here, and that's UNFPA. And within this framework, they will be providing significant technical assistance with human resource and the infrastructure that we require to efficiently run the legal pro bono service. But through the Spotlight Initiative, there is a similar component that will tackle the rural and the remote communities. So I think once we consolidate all of these efforts, I can safely say in about a year's time, we will be really providing access to justice as is needed across the country. So this afternoon, I have the privilege and the pleasure to make something that didn't remain a concept, but will actually be realized this afternoon. I thank you all for coming, and I sincerely thank all the partners this afternoon as we move forward towards providing the level of service and care that those who experience the most horrific forms of violence need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for that presentation. We at the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security admire and appreciate your drive and encouragement that you have in fighting to end violence against women and girls in Guyana. Next, I'd like to welcome to the mic Ms. Pauline Chase, who is the president of the Guyana Bar Association and who is an attorney at law at the bar now for 21 years.
I was asked to make a presentation, and when you ask attorneys to speak, we never shrug at that opportunity. We are here today to address a very important matter of concern in our society: gender-based violence, domestic violence, an all-encompassing term in our parlance in Guyana. As we're all well aware, this has been a problem plaguing society, not just ours, since time immemorial. Violence, some may argue, has its root in and since the existence of man, and has evolved over time, taking different forms. Gender-based violence is particularly concerning, as published research numbers, that is, as we say in the profession, the empirical evidence, tends to suggest that it affects women and girls more than any other category of persons. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual abuse in her lifetime. This is an unacceptable statistic, and we must individually and collectively do all that we can to bring that number to 0. While gender-based violence affects more women and girls, it is important to note that it not only affects women and girls. As the Honorable Minister mentioned, it also affects men and boys, They're also targeted, as well as other categories of persons. Violence does not discriminate, as we know. It cuts across all divides and affects everyone, irregardless of gender, age, race, religion, or political affiliation, and has far-reaching consequences on the victim, family, children, and society at large. We must therefore not rest until no one is affected and suffers. We must continuously push back, reject, fight against all forms of violence. At the Bar Association of Guyana, we are happy to lend our assistance in this fight against gender-based violence. As officers of the court, we are duty-bound to so do. The initiative being launched today is one part of a series of actions you would have noted within our society to fight gender-based violence. It is one part of a bigger machine, and when all the parts are put together, provides a cohesive and complete approach at all levels of the system to tackle this scourge. Within the ongoing United Nations 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we've seen a number of steps being taken to address this issue. For instance, a 914 reporting hotline, panel discussions throughout the country, the I CAN pledge, which we will be taking later this afternoon to bring awareness, and the launch by the Supreme Court of the expansion of domestic violence interview and virtual hearing rooms, a most laudable initiative under the leadership of our esteemed Chancellor and Chief Justice. While these are recent actions, they are not the only or first actions taken with regard to this form of violence. It is worthy to note that the Domestic Violence Act, when enacted in 1996, was hailed for its progressive, far-reaching, and modern approach. It was the first of its kind in the region. Guyana led the way. It widened, for instance, and codified the definition of violence from just physical violence to include verbal, sexual, and psychological abuse. And it gave at that time what was considered radical but much needed remedies to victims. The justice system therefore plays an important role in bringing redress, relief, and protection to victims of domestic violence. At the Bar Association, we acknowledge our important role as attorneys at law in ensuring access to that justice. The best frameworks are absolutely worthless if there's no access to it. We appreciate that we are the mechanism through which the justice framework is accessed. We take that role and that duty very seriously. We further appreciate that many victims of domestic violence are of challenging means and require assistance in accessing justice. While there are facilities for pro se litigants, those are the persons who wish to represent themselves, this initiative will give support to those who wish assistance in navigating the justice system, and will also buttress the already established legal aid, which the Honorable Minister also mentioned, and hopefully easing its burden. Through this initiative, the Bar Association, through its members, throughout all 3 counties of Guyana, will provide legal services pro bono to the most vulnerable through a means test of 500 gender-based violence cases over the next year, ending at the end of 2022. I know the words pro bono strike a chord, and some think it's a dirty word in the profession. It is not. Many members of the bar already give of their time and resources pro bono, and have been doing so for a long time. Legal aid in Guyana, which now receives a subvention from the government, maybe perhaps in the early 2000s, if my memory serves me correct, was in fact established in this country through the joint efforts of members of the bar, including Baini Karan, Ashton Chase SC, Josephine Whitehead SC, and the late Miles Fitzpatrick SC, to name a few. They came together and pooled their own resources to provide free legal representation to persons in need. This initiative is therefore part of such ongoing efforts of members of the bar. And we thank the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security for teaming up with us to provide the organizational and logistical support, together with the United Nations Population Fund under their Spotlight initiative. We are confident that through this collaboration and working together, we can bring much needed support and relief to victims of gender-based violence. It would be remiss of me if I did not note that initiatives such as these do not imbalance the scales of lady justice, but rather assist in lending balance. Before I close, I wish to acknowledge all of the tireless and the hard work that our Minister of Human Resources and Social Security, the Honorable Dr. Vindhya Prasad, and her team has been doing to tackle this issue. And generally, not only raising awareness of the issue, but also putting in place mechanisms for tangible support. Please join with me in giving her a resounding round of applause, her and her team. In closing, the Bar Association is pleased to be part of this initiative and lend our support. We thank the ministry for reaching out to us and working with us. We hope by the end of the next year that the 500 number will not increase, Minister, but will dramatically be reduced as a corresponding result of the reduction of incidents of gender-based violence. We look forward to meaningful collaboration over the next year, bringing much needed relief and assistance to those most in need. We've already had very encouraging response from members of the bar, and we are ready to work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chase, for your presentation. I'd now like to introduce the United Nations Populations Fund Liaison Officer in Guyana, Mr. Adler Bino, who will give his presentation and will explain the UNFPA's contribution to this initiative.
Yesterday, in front of Guyana's Parliament building, a number of us in our individual capacities, but also as representatives of our respective organizations, declared, "I can." We declared that we will listen with empathy to those experiencing violence. We declare that we will educate ourselves on resources available, as well as share resources available for survivors of violence against women and girls. We declare that we will support survivors of violence against women and girls when they reach out to us. Today provides us an opportunity to demonstrate yet again the commitment of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security to roll out the needed interventions to prevent as well as to respond to instances of violence against women and girls. Today provides us with an opportunity to demonstrate yet again the commitment of the United Nations Population Fund and the Spotlight Initiative program, a unique collaboration between the European Union, the United Nations, and the government and people of Guyana to support the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security to develop and roll out interventions to prevent as well as to respond to instances of violence against women and girls. Through the Spotlight Initiative program and the generosity of the European Union, UNFPA will be supporting the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security with the needed financial and technical resources to aid the successful implementation of this legal pro bono initiative. UNFPA extends congratulations to the Honorable Minister of Human Services and Social Security for this intervention and the ministry itself on what we consider to be a very commendable step forward in preventing and responding to violence against women and girls in Guyana. Together, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Bino, for your presentation. We will now have the formalization of this collaboration between the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and the Bar Association of Guyana, whereby our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Shaniel Hussein Altar, and the President of the Bar Association of Guyana, Ms. Pauline Chase, will execute a memorandum of understanding to bring into fruition the Legal Pro-bono 500 initiative. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today and for witnessing this momentous occasion. As we have learned today from this collaboration between the private sector, non-governmental organization, and the government, is that if we pool our resources together, if I can, if you can, then we all can end domestic violence and gender-based violence. Thank you very much.